Great taste. Sweet. Sour. So good to taste.
Welcome to KRUU's Great Taste. I'm Steve Boss, and we are coming to you from solar-powered KRUU FM. We're at Green Building Supply, and 60 minutes of delicious radio is on its way to you. This evening, we're going to start with our health segment from Emily Rose Shaw, who is our health coach. We're so glad to welcome her back, as always. And we've got lots, isn't that great?
Yeah, fantastic.
And we've got lots of other interesting things going on this evening. Our first guest via Skype is going to be author Lauren Mandel. Her book is Eat Up, which is the inside scoop on rooftop agriculture. So it's going to be fascinating talking to Lauren. And then in the second half of the show, we're going to be speaking with Nathan Tan, who's the author of The Forgetful Gentleman, 30 Ways to Turn Good Intentions into Action. And you say, what in the heck? What is that about? Why are we talking about that? Well, because actually Nathan has several chapters on etiquette as far as food is concerned, food etiquette and throwing a party and all that kind of stuff, which I'm very interested in because in today's world, it seems like a lot of that culture has gone out of society. So it should be really interesting talking to Nathan. Also, Barb and Dallas Grijalva are here, and they are with Back to the Basics. Barb and Dallas sell at the farm. At the farmer's market every week, and they're going to be making some fantastic pasta for us. We're going to sample a traditional Ligurian pasta. This pasta is going to be made with potatoes, green beans, and pesto alla genovese. So that is a very traditional preparation in Liguria, and we're going to make it with einkorn, which is one of the progenitors or maybe the original source of wheat that has been found maybe as long as 10,000, 12,000 years ago. There have been actual sightings in history of this particular form of wheat. So many people who are gluten intolerant can actually eat this product. And yes, and we're going to actually do a little bit of a riff on pesto alla genovese. But we'll get to that in just a few minutes. Anyway. So our health coach, Emily Rose Shaw, is here, and this is the last segment on physical activity before we move on. So tell us a little bit about what you're going to tell us about.
Okay. Well, you asked for it last week. You were interested in learning more about the foods to eat before, during, and after a workout. So today I'm going to be covering food and sleep, the fuel for your workout. So first, what to eat before, during, and after a workout, or should you eat anything at all? And it really depends on your health goals. Honestly, if you're going to be trying to lose weight or building muscle or training for a marathon, it's going to be very different. But in general, there's no surprises. You know, you guys who know me know that I say, lose the sugary drinks, the shakes, the bars. A lot of those things have chemicals in them, added sugars. Just stick to real food and real water. So before exercise, you don't really need to eat anything if you're not hungry, especially if you're trying to lose weight. However, if you're one of those people who likes to exercise first thing in the morning and doesn't like to exercise on an empty stomach, in that case, 2 hours before exercise, if you can, try to eat an easily digestible, high-quality carbohydrate for energy. And keep it simple. This is not the time to try new food. Keep it really as simple as possible. So low in fat, even low in protein is good because it's those things can be harder to digest. And I've seen a lot of recommendations from exercise specialists for higher glycemic carbohydrates like bagels, but that tends to spike your blood sugar and then your insulin. And insulin has been linked to body fat into the storage of body fat. So I tend to side with the other studies which say, and for regular health benefits, to go for the whole grain carbohydrates, like a piece of sprouted grain toast would be great. Or you could do something like a piece of fruit, which is also really easy, like a apple or banana is a great thing too. And also, You could do a green juice. I'm very into juicing, of course. We've done a show on juicing and smoothies. And a green juice is great because it requires basically no digestion at all. And it has vitamins, minerals, and it's hydrating. Hydration is equally important, and it helps to keep your body cool. So a rule of thumb is to try and drink 2 cups of water prior to your workout, like 2 hours before. That's a good thing for keeping hydrated.
Okay, so someone who was talking to me said that if you want to build muscle mass, you also have to eat before your workout.
That's more crucial after your workout, and we'll talk about that in a minute. For your exercise, during your exercise, if you're exercising less than 60 minutes, then you can just stick to water. Or if water is kind of boring to you, you could try a water infusion. There's a lot of wonderful water infusion recipes. I'll try to post one on my blog that has berries, citrus, different herbs, and mint. And you can just put it in a mason jar with your water, and you can actually, or you could put it out in the sun and do like a sun type of tea water infusion. And that's really tasty. You can take that to the gym for your workout. If you're doing exercise that's longer than 60 minutes, I recommend coconut water over a sports drink because coconut water is natural. It has lots of electrolytes and minerals, and it's very hydrating. And if you're an elite athlete, if you're training for a marathon, you probably
Like me.
Yeah, exactly. Like you, Steve, you might need something more.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. So now, after exercise.
All right.
So consuming protein after workout has been shown to benefit muscles because it provides the building blocks for the muscle tissue and the repair. But you also want a high quality carbohydrate that replaces the glycogen stores, which is the storage form of carbohydrate in your muscles. So that is also very important. And also, contrary to popular belief, the way to build muscle is really to perform resistance training using your body weight or weights. Huge amounts of excess protein is not needed, and it can actually be detrimental to your health. So between 10 to 20 grams after resistance training is good. Try and consume it within 30 minutes after you work out. You could have a green smoothie. Again, the green smoothie.
This girl never gives up, does she, on the green smoothies? I mean, it's like always, it's her...
Well, they've changed my life, and I may sound like a broken record, but, just a reminder that they are a great thing to have. You could put in some protein powder, a clean protein powder like pea or hemp, or brown rice. And if you consume dairy, you could do whey. Just make sure the dairy is organic and it's a clean source. And also in terms of water, you can weigh yourself before and after exercise. And for every pound you lose, drink 2 cups of water. So that's kind of a good rule of thumb.
All right, so how does sleep fit into this equation?
So sleep is your other fuel, and if you have a better sleep, you are more likely to have the energy to exercise and the less need for artificial stimulants like caffeine to have energy for your workout.
Okay, now what about after your workout? I mean, a lot of times my muscles are like sore, and I'm just wondering, is that a buildup of like lactic acid?
Yeah, and it's what you can do for that is just really flush with a lot of water, drink a lot of water, and also you can get a massage, give yourself a little massage. Wherever you have soreness, you can just give yourself a massage, and that can help that. And stretch, kind of keep moving. That's the best strategy, and it'll go away. But it's a sign that you've actually done something for your muscles.
That's good, because after all that effort, I'd like to make sure there was some type of sign. Does it make a difference when I exercise if weight loss is a goal? I've heard that doing exercise first thing in the morning is the best time.
Well, looking at different studies, there's actually not a huge amount of benefit to doing it at any one time. It's really a matter of personal choice and when you can fit it into your routine. You just want to do it. So whether you're a morning person, you like to get it first thing, so you don't have to think about it later on during the day, or if you, go to work, or you like to have your morning free of physical activity and doing something else, then doing it later in the day is great. But consistency is the key. Just a word of caution: don't exercise too close to bedtime, because you may have experienced that. It can make you really wired, and also it increases your body temperature and metabolism, and that's the reason why that you feel wired and it's harder to sleep. So don't exercise, right before you go into bed.
Okay. And the action step.
Well, we're in summer, and it's really important to stay hydrated. So before your workout, 2 hours before, if you can think of it, try and drink at least 2 cups of water so that you're ready. You'll probably notice it, that you have water and you're feeling hydrated.
I have to tell you, 2 hours before I work out, I'm asleep.
So you were doing in the morning. Okay. Well, then, when you wake up, have some water.
Sounds good. That's our health coach, Emily Rose Shaw. You can find her at emilyroseshaw.com. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Okay, does everybody feel healthier now? Good, because you're going to need it since we're going to have some pasta soon. Now, yes, you can do. There's plenty of room around here. You can spread out if you need. Do you want to ask? You want to ask a question? You certainly can, Bev, if you come over here, because I'm not going to have the ability to run around tonight. It looks like So just come over so you can ask that question.
Emily, you're always talking about your green smoothies, and you said tonight it's changed your life. I'd love to hear how it's changed your life.
I think first and foremost, my energy level. I have one every morning for breakfast. And so I've noticed definitely an increase in energy. I've noticed a difference in my skin and also in my ability to focus, my productivity. I just feel like I'm a little sharper mentally. And it also just keeps me feeling really satisfied. It's really changed my entire relationship with food. I feel very satisfied with having it for breakfast, and I don't know, it's been great for me, and I love hearing about how it's affecting other people too. So if you have a story of how it's changed you or something that you're noticing, let me know, because who knows, I should probably compile something.
Probably. And just for the record, as some people know, I have a smoothie every morning too, but it's not green, and it's really delicious, and it's changed my life too. So there you go. So whatever color you want, Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I promise you, before we get finished working together for these 6 months, I'm going to try green smoothies for several weeks. We'll put that on the list. I was interested. That pea powder thing sounds good. We'll have to talk about that sometime in the future. All right?
It'll be your challenge.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sure it will be a challenge.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. Lauren Mandel is with us. Lauren holds a Master of Landscape Architecture from the University of Pennsylvania and a Bachelor of Arts in Environmental Science. She is a project manager and rooftop agriculture specialist at Roof Meadow, where she designs green roofs and oversees green roof and rooftop agriculture projects throughout North America. Welcome to Great Taste, Lauren.
Thank you so much for having me, Steve.
We're really excited. I'm really excited to talk with you because I think that this is kind of a piece of the whole cultivating puzzle that really starts to integrate the cities with the rural community.
Right, and urban agriculture has been around for a long time. It seems to have taken off recently, and people are really starting to grow food in all different ways in cities. They're growing in vacant lots, they're growing next to sidewalks, on fire escapes, and of course on rooftops. And
what I would imagine, what have been some of the greatest challenges trying to put, I guess actually let's start somewhere else. What actually does Roof Meadow do?
So the company that I work for, Roof Meadow, designs green roofs on buildings around the country, and we also manage them. So we have stewardship services, and we provide long-term warranties. So we're sort of the design, manage, warrant end of things, and then we have a national network of contractors who we license to install our green roof systems. So we're really there from start to finish. We're there from usually the initial idea of the green roof all the way through construction and long-term warranty, which is usually 10 years, can be 15 or 20 years. So we're in it for the long run.
And when did the company start?
We started in 1997, and the company really consists of civil engineers, landscape architects like myself. We have horticulturalists on staff, and also construction specialists. And so whenever we approach a project, it's really with a holistic viewpoint, which has been very effective so far.
Now, would any of us just be familiar with any of these types of projects that have been done, or would we have to be really in that particular city like New York, Chicago, to have real knowledge of these projects?
Well, in terms of just regular green roofs that my company has designed, the Chicago City Hall is not too far away from where you are. So that's one of our signature green roofs. We've done a lot in New York City, Philadelphia, some on the West Coast, but I would say that the one that you're most likely familiar with is probably Chicago City Hall.
And are most of these commercial ventures, or are they just private people who are, looking to have more greens in their own diet?
So I should back up and say that most of the roofs that we've done historically at Roof Meadow have not been edible. So they've been just regular vegetated roofs that are designed in order to manage stormwater, to provide amenity spaces for people, and other sort of things like that. So rooftop agriculture is something that's new to Roof Meadow. So we're trying to build that part of the business right now, and we've been involved in several small projects so far, and we have a couple of clients right now, one of whom is in New York City and is working to build the largest rooftop farm in North America. And another client that we have right now is actually a public high school in Philadelphia, in South Philadelphia. And they're trying to build a half-acre educational rooftop farm to incorporate into their curriculum and their culinary arts program at the school.
Let's go to the New York project, because I remember reading in the book that the jury is still out as far as whether this could be a commercial success, but it sounds like that there's a lot of momentum behind it.
Yes, there is. So people are growing food on roofs in basically 4 different primary ways. They're growing in containers, in raised beds, in row farms, and with hydroponics. And so in New York City, we see all of these different methods being deployed. But in terms of commercial production, people are really sticking with the row farming and the greenhouse hydroponic production. And so in terms of actually turning rooftop agriculture and rooftop farming into a profitable industry, we see the most success with the hydroponic operations right now. The row farming, of course, is making money as well, and is also able to integrate the community aspect and sort of the volunteerism and all of this other really valuable community benefits that we see from urban agriculture. But if you really want to make money at it, then it seems right now like hydroponics is the way to go.
Now, I don't know whether Megan can hear me, but Liam's welcome. We don't mind him making noise, so you don't need to leave. So those are our listeners who may have heard Liam in the background. He just left because, okay, good, yeah. Tell them that they don't need to leave. We're fine with him hanging out. Okay, so I just wanted to bring in Barb Grijalva, who's here, because she's actually one of the farmers who works in our local area and is at the farmers market all the time. And I'm just wondering, have you heard very much about rooftop agriculture?
The only thing I heard was on Growing a Greener World on Iowa Public Television. They were talking about it. So I was kind of curious on how you get all your stuff up there. Is it kind of a pain to get it up? This one was 13 stories high, I think. I was just curious on how they get everything up there and get everything back down.
That sounds like a good place to start, Lauren.
That's a really good question. So I look at rooftop agriculture in 2 different scales. There's rooftop gardening, which is sort of the at-home kind of production. And that can be very simple to bring up to your roof, because that could be just a few potted tomato plants or an herb garden, 1 raised bed, something very simple like that. When you get into rooftop farming, which is this sort of commercial type operation, it becomes more complicated. And you really have to rely upon the expertise of professionals in other fields in order to help make your farm a reality. So farming on the ground usually involves the farmer and various other people who sort of come and go. But up on a roof, in order to build one of these farms, oftentimes it's required that you consult with a green roof designer, landscape architect, an architect, a structural engineer, all of these different people who are working together in order to get materials up to the roof, make sure that it drains properly, make sure that it doesn't weigh too much, and make sure that it functions like a successful farm can. So the way that people actually bring materials up for these commercial scale farms is usually with a crane, so with a construction crane. And sometimes they even will use something called a blower truck in order to get the soil up to the roof. And this is a piece of machinery, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but it's a truck that's sort of retrofit with this long hose that was initially designed to blow mulch onto landscapes, to large landscapes. And they've adapted these trucks for green roof soil, or media as we call it in the industry. So they actually are able to very efficiently blow the media up to the roof to the specified thickness.
That's
really quite something.
Yeah, it sounds absolutely incredible. I imagine that you have some amazing stories that you could relate. One of the things I want to mention is that the book consists of not only descriptions of the different projects, but interviews with the people behind the project. So it's very fascinating that way. And I am certain that you've met some interesting characters.
Yeah, some very interesting characters. And I'd like to stress that Rooftop Agri involves all different people from all different walks of life. It's a really diverse community, and I interview people from all different nationalities in my book. Men and women seem to be pretty much equally involved in rooftop agriculture. There are some young folks, there are some old folks. I interviewed even a 5-year-old who was very invested in her family's rooftop garden. So it's really the type of movement that bridges all ages, it bridges, all backgrounds, and people are interested in rooftop agriculture for a diversity of reasons, and everyone gets something a little bit different out of it.
Anybody have any questions for Lauren? Yes, Tom, come on up and let's ask her.
Hi, Lauren. I thought I read that Whole Foods was doing a big rooftop garden. Do you know about that? Is that part of your project with your company?
No, I'm not involved in that particular project. That is a greenhouse hydroponic project, so I deal with basically soil-based systems. But this is a partnership between Whole Foods and a rooftop farming company called Gotham Greens. And Gotham Greens started out with one 15,000 square foot greenhouse in Brooklyn, and that's about more or less a third of an acre on top of a roof. And they were growing microgreens and herbs and selling them to Whole Foods, to some other high-end markets in Brooklyn, and to restaurants. And their business was doing quite well, and they started building more and maintaining their relationship with Whole Foods. And then Whole Foods now is building a new store in Brooklyn that will actually have one of their greenhouses directly on top of the supermarket, which is pretty incredible because most of the other hydroponic greenhouse rooftop farms are retrofit onto existing buildings, which presents a lot of design challenges. So the idea of building, building a building with the idea that this greenhouse is going to go on top from the start is a very economically efficient way of doing things, and it's gonna be great to see how it pans out because they'll be able to deliver the food right downstairs. And I mean, how much fresher can you get?
What's amazing to me is that it's so complicated because you have zoning ordinances, you have the incredible amount of administrative bureaucracy that's going to go along with doing these types of things. And I would imagine that in large cities like New York and Chicago, it can be almost an insurmountable challenge.
You know, it's getting easier. A lot of these governments we've found have been pretty receptive to the idea of rooftop agriculture. Oftentimes there are policies in place that make it a little bit difficult, but what we've seen in cities like New York is that when people start approaching the zoning board and all these different entities within the government, we found that they have reacted in a positive way. So, for example, in New York City, previously, if you were to build a structure on top of your roof that is there for longer than 1 year, such as a permanent greenhouse, that would be considered in the eyes of the city an additional building story. And for that, you would oftentimes need a variance. And that can be an expensive process, a process with the uncertain outcome. And so what happened is people started going to the city and saying, listen, we want to grow food on our roofs in New York in greenhouses, and we don't want these greenhouses to act as an additional building story. So they've actually changed the building code to state that you can now put a greenhouse on your roof if it's used to grow food, and you don't need a variance for it. It's okay with everyone. And so that's a great example of how when people are vocal to the government, it can work out in a positive way.
I'm really sad in the sense that we can't continue to pursue this conversation. So I hope you'll join us again at a later date because there's so much to this. But before you go, Lauren, I'd really appreciate it if you would just encapsulate what it is that your company feels like is the primary objective to doing the things that you're doing. What in terms of a mission statement?
Well, we're interested in utilizing unused spaces in ways that benefit us and the environment in terms of managing stormwater, providing community benefits, healthy eating, and making the world a better, greener place. And I'd like to encourage everyone to visit my website at eatupag.com for more information.
That's eatupag.com. Lauren Mendel, the author of Eat Up, the inside scoop on rooftop agriculture. Thank you very much for joining us, Lauren.
Thank you.
You're listening to Great Taste on KRUU 100.1 FM, the solar-powered voice of Fairfield, Iowa. I'm Steve Boss, and we'll be back with our next guest in just a second. So our author, the Forgetful Gentleman, has been forgetful because we can't get a hold of Nathan Tan, which is just fine because we have so many other things to discuss on this week's show, including our movie review still to come with Beverly Merson. But before we get there, everyone in the Green Building Supply area who's sitting and enjoying the show is getting to eat a traditional Ligurian pasta right now. I've had several people say to me, wait, this doesn't even sound right. Potatoes and green beans and pesto mixed together. But this is an absolute treasure of a classical Ligurian dish. So if you went to Liguria in Italy, the region of Liguria, this is a dish that you might have. It was a dish that was the fishermen, for example, a very hearty dish that they would be able to eat, and it would sustain them. So you've got pasta, you've got potatoes, you've got green beans, and you've got pesto alla genovese. Now, the traditional way, just so we can clarify this a little bit, because pesto just means pounded, essentially. So it's anything that's pounded, because it was usually made with a mortar and a pestle, right? So when you speak about pesto alla genovese, you're speaking about a very specific pesto. And actually, the reason that people use that term now, pesto alla genovese, is because there have been so many other types of pounded things that have become popular over the years, especially in the States, that were never around before. So it was never necessary in Italy, for example. You didn't have to clarify what pesto was. It was pesto. That was pesto alla genovese. But now you can make pesto out of anything, basically. People make it out of red peppers. They make it out of arugula, like we're also doing. And so if you want to specifically talk about the traditional pesto, it's pesto alla genovese, which is made with basil, but it's basil from Liguria. It's Genovese basil. And this particular basil happens to come from a local source, from the Grijalva garden. And the potatoes do also. But the traditional recipe for pesto alla genovese, the pesto is basil. It's pine nuts. But we decided to use, I was reading an article in the New York Times where they were talking about, hey, substitute sunflower seeds, because pine nuts are very difficult. They're very expensive, first of all. Even the ones from China are incredibly expensive, and they're not any good. So why waste your money on the pine nuts? Get some sunflower seeds, which really aren't very expensive. I toasted them, and I think they actually turned out really nicely in this particular preparation. So if you want to make a traditional one, though, it's pine nuts, it's basil, it's garlic, and it's olive oil, really Tajasca olive oil from Liguria, which we did not use. And in addition to that, it's Parmigiano Reggiano and a little bit of pecorino. It can be a pecorino sardo, a pecorino romano. We use the pecorino romano. And that's the traditional recipe. Some people add butter. That's another thing that people use, for example, when they're making it. I sometimes like to do that because it adds a little bit of creaminess to it. It's not like it needs to be any richer, of course, but it is something that you can do, and it's a wonderful preparation. You can see how hearty it is, very, very hearty, and works really well. And if you want it to maintain its bright green color, you have to serve it right away, which we didn't get to do because we were busy doing an interview.
I just wanted to add, I had the opportunity to go to Barb's farm this past Saturday during farm. I'm sorry, 4th of July. Yeah. And it was one of the most marvelous experiences. It's just north of town, and if you all get a chance if she does it in the fall or next spring, or summer, I recommend it. It's one of the most well-kept organic small farms that I've ever seen. And she does it all by herself. And while I was there, she demonstrated how she was harvesting the potatoes. And I guess those were the potatoes that were in this dish. And just a great experience.
That's terrific, and I know Barb is really excited about doing it again right away because it was. Now, how many pounds of potatoes have you picked in the last few days?
The last couple days, we harvested 450 pounds, and there's probably 2,000 pounds total left out there. So,
and they're delicious. I mean, really good potatoes. So. Let me just mention to you that we're also going to do another preparation because we're going to do a pesto with arugula, and that is what Dallas is working on right now, and it's absolutely gorgeous. Now, I'm interested to hear what people think because this first pesto was done with the einkorn that we discussed, and this one's being done with a gluten-free pasta that's made in Italy, and I've never tasted it. This is a fusilli, and we'll have to see what it's like, but it's absolutely gorgeous. And if somebody can get a picture of that before, maybe somebody could take a picture of the pasta and take a picture of these lovely ladies with the pasta. That would be awesome, Gio. If you could do that, that's great. You're listening to KRUU 100.1 FM, the solar-powered voice of Fairfield, Iowa. I'm Steve Boss, and this is Great Taste, 60 minutes of delicious radio. And coming up in the next couple of minutes, we have our movie review, Cinebites, with Beverly Merson. So do you want to come up and we're going to discuss what movie? I don't know. She's going to surprise me, I'm sure, when she gets up here to talk about that. Next week on Great Taste, we're back at Hy-Vee. We'll be there Wednesday at 7 p.m. and the culinary arts students from Ottumwa will be there from Indian Hills Community College, and a couple of them will have returned from Spain. So we'll be getting the benefit of wonderful culinary tastes from Spain. I think that'll be a pretty exciting time period. And so, Beverly, what movie are we going to talk about?
What we're going to talk about tonight is Feast at Midnight. And what I want to remind you, Steve, is that this isn't a movie critique. It's not even a movie review. It's called Cinebites. And it's really all about food bites that take place in movies with food. So The Feast at Midnight is actually a children's film. It is probably one of the most charming children's foods movies that I've seen with food involved. It takes place in England at a British boys' boarding school. You see this most adorable little boy dropped off at school, and he's dragging his trunk all the way up to the door. His mother doesn't even bring him to the door. He's dragging it. And because he's the new kid in the school, what happens is he gets picked on. He's being bullied. They want does everybody know what tuck is? You get candy a tuck. They want his tuck and so on like that. But this kid is a smart kid. He's not going to take this hands down. So there's a visiting day when all the parents show up, except for, of course, his parents and then two other children's parents that don't show. So they decide they're starting to fantasize about delicious food because the headmaster of the school has committed to very healthy eating at the school. So now they're starting to dream of sundaes with whipped cream and so on like that. They're building the sundae. And this new fellow at the boarding school, Magus, says, let's go make something in the kitchen. And the two other fellows say, no, we can't. We're not allowed. He goes, sure, let's just go for it. So then what you do is you find these fellows in the kitchen in different scenes. And then they start off with pancakes. Then the next scene, they're baking cookies, sugar cookies. The next scene, they're doing this wonderful strawberry pudding where they've picked the strawberries for the pudding. And this is all secret. It's the Feast at Midnight. They're sneaking into the kitchen. The chef of the kitchen is starting to realize there's people coming into his kitchen, but he doesn't realize who it is. And then their last scene, when they're cooking this wonderful chocolate mousse cake with whipped cream, the chef decides, as they go to put their cake into the fridge, the chef is hiding. He's all bundled up in winter wear, and he's hiding. He says, oh, so that's who you are. And when he sees the cake that they're about to put in the fridge, he becomes an ally with them. He helps them decorate it with beautiful flowers, and they start to have this magnificent beautiful birthday cake, which is actually for somebody at the school. So they all get discovered. And what happens is that they call themselves the Scoffers because named after a scoffer. Does anybody know who a scoffer was?
Escoffier.
Escoffier, yes. So this little fellow who knows all about food, he decides that they should be called the Scoffers. And the Scoffer Club gets found by the headmaster, and the head chairman of the Scoffer Club, this little son, Magus, he gets expelled. And his father, and during this whole movie, the father is helping him move through his schooling, because his father went to the schooling. He's coaching him with the food. He's an ally as well. He tells him about this little, to go to this little store, to sneak away to this little store to pick up special jams for one of the dishes they're going to make, and so on like that. And at the end, basically, you're seeing this little fellow who's expelled gets accepted to the Escoffier school. And it's so charming. It really talks to the child in us, the child who loves food. Because when you see these children in the kitchen, the flour is flying, the whisks are huge, they're practically bigger than them, the bowls are bigger than them, and they're happy. And they're happy making just the most wonderful dessert. And it brings them together because now all the other children are finding out about it. They want to be part of the Scoffer Club. And the big bully is now alienated because he's never invited to the Scoffer Club. So I fully recommend the film. It's charming. You'll love it. You'll smile right through it. And you'll wonder how this little fella knew all about these Escoffier recipes.
Feast at midnight?
Feast at midnight.
All right. And what about next week?
Next week. Haven't decided yet, Steve.
Okay. That's fine. That's great. Thank you, Bev. On July 18th, we'll be back here at Green Building Supply, and that's a Thursday, so that's a bonus show. How lucky can you get? Twice in 1 week. So that's next week? Oh my gosh. So that's next week, right? July 18th. And we're doing movies and food. So it'll be a lot of fun. Carolyn M. Grant is the author who's going to be with us. The Cassoulet Saved Our Marriage. We had her cohort on a couple of months ago, and we're going to be discussing a number of different food movies and making a couple of dishes from different food movies. So that's going to be a lot of fun and, of course, delicious as always. Barb, I wanted to talk with you for a minute. So when we were listening to Lauren talking about rooftop agriculture, I was wondering, what do you think that the main reaction would be among people to who are farmers, who are regular in the dirt level, sea level, we'll say, farmers to rooftop agriculture, to the urbanites getting involved in agriculture?
I'm just kind of curious myself. I mean, I'd like to really go tour one to really know what it's about. So I really don't know what to think. I mean, I'm so used to just digging in the dirt and not having to worry about how much weight is there and what you can take up there. So I would definitely love to go see one.
It sounds like an amazing projects that are going on. Obviously, they're all different because of the different types of environment that they're found in. And I think that that could be something we should organize some type of Chicago tour to go see that. That would be really fun. Barb Grijalva is back to the basics. And I'm wondering, I wanted to ask you also, have you decided a lot of your cohorts are using high tunnels, and you've never put a high tunnel in, and high tunnel allows you to grow year round. Do you not want to put it in because you want to take off for the winter?
That was pretty much my main reason, but now I hear of all the problems that they're having, and I'm thinking, every time I hear a problem that somebody has with theirs, I'm thinking, oh, I don't have to deal with that, or I don't have to buy insurance for mine, or, I think it just saves a lot of problems on my end. I'd rather just take my winter off and do my in-home bakery, which I deliver to several gas stations. So I kind of like it where I'm at now.
One of the other things that I think is interesting, based on what your main crop is, corn, right?
Well, we have close to 10 acres of sweet corn, and then we probably have close to an acre this year of popcorn.
Yes, or the famous popcorn. But interestingly enough, the weather has changed things quite dramatically for you because of all the spring rain. You normally would start selling your corn when?
We're about a month behind this year. Last year, at least a month before now, we were selling. So we had to do a lot of replanting, and then the neighbors' cows kind of got into one of our fields, and yeah, we had a big problem there, but it is what it is, and we just deal with it.
It's all kinds of the trials and tribulations of actually being a farmer. I wanted to ask Dallas a little bit about the arugula because everybody's had a chance to eat it but me. So was it good? It was good, huh? It was good. Okay, intense. Yeah. And how was the pasta, by the way? The gluten-free pasta, was it good? Couldn't tell the difference, huh? Interesting. Anybody who doesn't agree with that? You can speak up. No? Nobody agree? Okay, everybody agrees with that. So really, we didn't make the pasta, so it's okay. So tell us how you made the arugula pesto.
I use a little bit of olive oil and then a lot of arugula. I use a touch of the truffle oil, which was a good change. And then both of the cheeses. I think that was it for the arugula one.
Basically used a high-speed blender is what you're using. And did you put all the ingredients in at one time?
No, I put the oil at the bottom because if there's no moisture at the bottom, it's not going to spin very well. And then I added the arugula in a little bit at a time because if you put too much arugula in, the blender isn't going to spin. It will just stop spinning. So. Okay,
and then, of course, you can adjust as you go.
Exactly. You can add more oil. If it doesn't spin for a little bit, just add a little bit more oil. It'll get more moisture in there, and it'll continue to spin.
So one of the things about arugula, as a couple of people said, it's intense. As the heat gets going, it usually gets more and more intense, doesn't it?
Yeah. I've had several plantings this year, so we could probably get a first picking off of it, and it's not so bitter. But, yeah, the heat really makes it bitter this time of year. We'll probably quit planting that for the summer, and then in the fall, maybe towards the end of August, we can start planting it again it won't be so bitter then.
I can't wait to taste it. I hope there's some left that I get to taste. But the one thing about arugula, I just noticed Jan Swinton sitting back there, and I didn't have any idea you were here. Are you going to come up and talk with us? I hope so. Yeah, that'll be great. So the one thing about arugula is, and some of you may remember we talked about this a few weeks ago, many of the greens that we eat, chard, spinach, kale, whatever, they really don't have the same nutrient quality that they used to have many, many, many years ago. And so what the people who analyze this have found is that actually herbs have very, very high nutritional quality still. And also arugula is one of the greens that is still very high in its nutritional component. So if you want to get your greens, people talk about greens, you want to get some really solid vitamin content. Herbs such as rosemary and thyme and oregano and arugula is another thing that you can use. Parsley, I don't remember. I hadn't read about that, so I'm not sure I can remember exactly where that fits in.
Do you know why the herbs have more nutritional properties than the greens?
I honestly, I don't know for certain because I don't remember off the top of my head, but I think it's because they've been messed with less. So much of the cultivation of our plant products has really been done in laboratories over many, many years, and really the seeds that have been developed are more for transportability, for example, color, all those kinds of things. It's not like it's not like many of the universities have been working for 100 years trying to breed plants that have more nutrition, but really it's more from an economic standpoint. So I would say that that's probably one of the major reasons, but again, I don't remember exactly. There was a great article in the New York Times a few weeks ago. You could probably just Google nutritional quality of greens in New York Times, and you can probably read about it there, I'm sure.
I heard that the arugula is a cancer-fighting food, too. You could probably research it, but that's one thing I heard about arugula.
Arugula is something I can't get enough of. I love arugula, so it's just awesome. Jan, hi. Good to see you.
Hi. How are you?
I'm great. I'm sorry you weren't here to listen to our discussion about rooftop agriculture. I think you would have found it pretty fascinating.
Actually, I've seen some of those rooftop gardens in Chicago. I did the Milwaukee Growing Power course a year ago, and one of the parts of that course was come in a day early and travel around and see a bunch of those. So, yeah, they're very interesting, really.
Jan Swinton is our hometown harvest coordinator. She's the one who takes care of making sure that everything is just moving ahead for local food and flavor, right?
Yeah, we always hope it's ahead. We're going for forward here on the movement, but it's definitely moving all the time. The reason I was late tonight, we're working with the engineers about the greenhouse heating. We're trying to get waste heat from an industrial site to heat this greenhouse, and it's going to be a farm-to-school greenhouse where we're growing vegetables for the kids at our local public schools. And so it'll be very interesting to see how this works. It's a process, getting everyone involved with the whole process. So, but very productive meetings, and we're going to get going on it here real soon.
Another thing that I think could be very fascinating to let everybody in on is that you've been working with one of the other farmers, Claude, to put together this bar that is going to be a star at Ragbri, on Ragbri.
Well, we are making 50,000 granola bars, the Aronia berry granola bars, and we put together the banners and posters yesterday, and we are ready for Ragbri. There's a little bakery up in Sioux Center, Iowa, Casey's Bakery, that's doing the production work for us, and we're working on packaging and labeling and the whole 9 yards. And yes, we're definitely launching a big new product.
So I think that what's really interesting is how this is going to be sold. So those of our listeners who are not familiar with this is the Register's annual Great Bicycle Race across Iowa, and it takes place the last week of July. Fairfield happens to be the last, second to last stop on the ride this year. And vendors have lots of different rules that they have to follow if they want to be part of this whole process. But you're going to move a little bit beyond that, right?
I always
you're on the fringes.
I find other ways of doing these things. So the local food coordinators from all across Iowa get together once in a while, and so I talk to each of one of the ones who was working in the areas where the Ragbri ride is going through, and found a farm somewhere along the route, usually about an hour or two into the morning ride. And so then I've been on this ride a number of times, and you get up at 4:30 or 5 and start moving. And an hour or so later, when your blood's finally pumping through your body, you stop and eat something. And so the granola bars will be really handy because you could shove them in a pocket and eat them later, but it'll be mostly a breakfast thing. So we are working with the Practical Farmers of Iowa and with the Regional Food System Working Group and with a lot of our Midwest Aronia Berry Association members to find farms that are along the route and put a red truck with a big banner that says Claude's Aronia Berry granola bars on the side, and we're just going to sell 50,000 Aronia Berry bars in the next week or so.
I think it's just ingenious, first of all, because
I think it's going to be fun. I'm just looking forward to it. We're tent camping as we go, and so we're just going to hang out with the Ragbri crowd, and we've got our bikes with us, so we'll take turns biking for a couple hours and then come back and work the stand. Somebody else can go biking, and so it'll be fun.
You're listening to Great Taste on KRUU 100.1 FM, the solar-powered voice of Fairfield, Iowa. I'm Steve Boss, and this is 60 Minutes of Delicious Radio, or How to Scam the System with Jan Swinton. So, a matter of fact, I'm not going to repeat the story that I heard earlier about what's going to happen at Green Building Supply on the night of Ragbri, because that's also very interesting. But so, how is Claude, hooked up into all this? Because he's obviously the one who, you saw his bars, and so how did it all work? And who's got their fingers in the pie all the way along the way here?
Claude's kind of doing this by himself, and my fingers actually aren't even in the pie. I've offered to help him do the marketing and this initial sell through the Ragbri ride, because I really love his bars, and they're really good. And I was doing it with the local food system coordinators anyway, and so we're just rounding up a big chunk of his project and taking it with us. So that will be the thing that will be at every stop along the way. We're actually shipping cases of granola bars to some of these farms that we'll be setting up on, and so we'll be all set for that all the way across. So this is something that Claude is launching on his own. We think that in the long run, after we get this initial run done, that the bakery that's been doing it isn't going to want to do this forever, and that they're going to teach us how. And then we're going to set up shop here and be producing them here in Fairfield.
Oh, now that's very interesting. It's the first I've heard of that. That's exciting.
Yeah.
So now, will Claude actually be on the route too? Or when you say we're going to be doing this, who's a part of this journey?
Well, the we is the local food system coordinator. So and Claude's going to show up once in a while. We'll see how this goes. I don't know. He'll definitely be here. We're setting up in his front yard once we get to Fairfield. And there's a couple of other Aronia berry growers. We'll probably have more than one venue in some of the days if we can find a couple other Aronia berry guys that want to set us up. So it'll just be a blast. I'm just looking forward to it. It'll be a whole lot of fun.
And most people how many of you are familiar with Aronia berries? We've talked about them before, right? Okay, so Aronia, so there's some members of our audience, and I'm sure listeners who don't know anything about Aronia berries. So I want to give us a little quick down and dirty on Aronia berries.
I can. They also call them chokeberries. It's one of those dark blue, really dark colored, astringent fruits. It's actually the consistency of an apple, but it's the size of the last knuckle of your pinky finger. They're very small. And very strong, almost bitter, but very astringent. So they come in about a handful on a little bunch on a bush. The bushes can get up to about 12 feet tall and about 12 feet wide. They've tried all throughout the Midwest Association to plant them at the same spacing so that when someday someone invests in that expensive picker, they'll all be planted in the right consistency so we can pick them all by machine. But they've just been catching on the last 5 or 6 years. After you plant, it's 5 years until you get a really good harvest. They kind of get going, and the deer eat them off a little. And last year we didn't have any because it froze early in the spring and lost all the blossoms. But this year we have a really great crop. It'll be really good. So most of it's getting made into juice, and that juice is getting concentrated, and that concentrated juice then can be sold for smoothies or for all kinds of stuff. The Aronia berry bars is half smoothie and half the berries crunched up in a blender.
And most of the, we'll say the excitement around Aronia berries as far as an antioxidant and nutritional value comes from the fact that they've been used in Europe for a long time, hundreds of years, really.
They have, and farmers have been doing it in Poland is the big place for Aronia berries over there. We lived in Africa for a while, and in Zimbabwe, they had big coffee fields that went up the side of mountains, and there was little paths through where people came through. It's like that with the Aronia berries in Poland. Just huge up the side of a mountain. They're bushes, they're woody, and so about every 5 to 7 years, you kind of cut them back to the ground and just cut them off and let them kind of restart. The rootstock stays the same. They'll last for generations.
Yeah, very fascinating.
Yeah.
Really, thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right. Anybody have any questions, by the way, for any of our guests, for Barb and for Dallas? I think Dallas is very interesting. I actually want to talk to you a little bit about culinary school, if you don't mind, because has anyone seen this new TV show called The Freshman Class? That's on. It's on the Cooking Channel. Have you seen it?
No, I have not.
Have you heard about it?
No.
Okay, so it's called The Freshman Class, and it's about these kids, or young people, I guess you would say, who were, they're going to Louisiana. I think it's a school in Louisiana, and I can't even remember the name of the school, but it's a culinary arts school in Louisiana, and it's a reality show, as if there aren't enough reality shows on TV. And we've seen a couple of episodes, and they're pretty interesting because this one, let me ask you, what's the policy if you're late to class?
Well, we have to be at class 90% of the time, or we don't pass the class at all. So
does that mean 90% of the time you have to attend class, or you have to be there at the start of class? How does it work out? There's a reason I'm asking this.
90% of the time we have to attend class. So our classes are only 2 weeks long. If you miss 2 days, you have to write a 3-page paper if you miss an extra day. And then if you're late to class, you just get docked points for that day too. So
of course, one of the things here is there's a mother and daughter that are attending the culinary school, right? And the mother's late like 2 days, and then she gets called down to the director's office, and they want to know why she can't get there on time, and they put her on academic probation and all kind. I mean, it's so hilarious in one sense because it's just a reality show that they're trying to just focus on that. But what's interesting is you can see if you ever are interested, and you can see what's going on in the classroom type of activity, and it is pretty fascinating. And one of the things that they focus on is that there is a lot of pressure on these students because there's so much information that's crammed into such a short period of time. Is that what you've experienced also?
yes, especially with our 2-week classes, they try to cram so much in there at once. It sometimes can get really confusing. Even our grading scale is a lot tougher too. 75% is an F in culinary school. So yeah, they have really high expectations. Time management is obviously really important to them. That's why we have to be there 90% of the time or we just fail the class. So it's important in the business industry. If you don't show up for work, they're not going to be happy with you. So
That's usually the case.
exactly. And they expect you to make quality food and do all your work. So
Now, when it comes to quality food, obviously the instructor is the one whose judgment, that's the judgment, right? It's whatever that person who's leading the class thinks. It's not what you think. It's not what one of your fellow students might think about your product. It's what the instructor says, it's got all the ingredients it needs, or the chicken was cooked too long, or whatever.
exactly. And some of our teachers are a little bit tougher than others. We have one teacher that you'll just show up to class and you won't know what you're doing that day. And it'll be like I don't know if you've seen this TV show Chopped. It'll be just like that, but it'll be a class. So it's pretty crazy, but you get used to it. And you know what teachers are going to be hard and what teachers aren't. So you know what to expect when you show up.
What's been the hardest challenge that you've faced? Because you have one semester left, right?
Yeah, I would rather do an internship than be I think it should be an option to cook in the hotel or be in an internship, because we're already used to a lot of the cooking experiences in the classroom, and that sort of relates to the hotel as well. So I'd rather go out and find something that I'm interested in and cook there instead of doing it at the school. But other than that, I like it for the most part.
I think that one thing that you're mentioning, Dallas, is that at the school that you attend, which is Kirkwood Community College, they have an actual hotel that you work in as opposed to doing an externship.
Yes, that's exactly right. They have their own hotel there. It's called the Class Act, and we have so many hours that we have to cook in the hotel ourselves to graduate.
Now that that sounds very fascinating. And did you have a question, Bob? We have time for one question, and that's it.
Dallas, what kind of things could you see yourself doing after you graduate? Well, what's your preference?
Well, I'm not really sure yet. I know I will know for sure, obviously, when I'm done graduating, and I'm also going to go for business management, so I want to own my own restaurant. We've talked about sustainable cooking, stuff like that, locally grown stuff. Since my mom has so many gardens, it'd be easy to get a lot of produce that way. But we're not really sure in what area we want to do yet. So
you've got plenty of time. Don't forget what I said, because what I said I think is most important. I told her she needs to cook for the best chef that she can find for at least a year, maybe 2 years, and then go to Europe and travel around and cook for just the great chefs around Europe. And then she can come back, and we'll all be glad to eat at her restaurant at that point. So, right. So thank you, Dallas, very much.
You're welcome.
You've been listening to Great Taste on KRUU 100.1 FM, solar-powered voice of Fairfield, Iowa. I'm Steve Boss. Next week on Great Taste, Indian Hills Culinary Arts students talking about their trip to Spain and their 2 weeks of really experiencing Spanish food at its best. So 60 minutes of delicious radio. Join us again next week.
Great Taste. Sweet. Sour. So good to taste.